Earlier on in this course, we introduced the concept of theosis, or deification, when we talked about the importance of the incarnation in our participation with God. The early church took very seriously the implications of the fact that God became a human, because the project of God to restore humanity to our rightful place as made in the image and according to God's likeness, the restoration to this hinges on there being a perfect image-bearing human who has not lost the likeness to go before us. And this is Christ. And I know that this concept is probably one that you haven't heard preached on much, but I can't stress enough how central this idea was in the time when the first creeds were being formulated. I mean, people gave decades of their life trying to think about how to make the incarnation really clear. This was absolutely at the center of how they were thinking about salvation and really the restoration of all things. The idea that this particular human, Jesus, born of a woman, lived life as a man, was crucified, and was bodily raised, the fact that this human was also God means that what was a mystery for a very long time, this is how the Apostle Paul talks about it, this mystery of God's own self is now revealed right in front of us. Like God's very own self, the image and the likeness of God is a human being walking among us, and we can experience God firsthand. So you might remember from your reading, Athanasius was the theologian who was doing a lot of this theological work. And while he himself was not writing about mystical experience, that experience of the presence of God, his theology became really foundational for all such experiences of God. So summing up his whole doctrine, he writes this: He became man in order that we might become God. He made himself visible in his body in order that we might have an idea of the invisible Father. He underwent outrages from men in order that we might have part in immortality. As we enter into death, the giving of our lives totally to God, in that death, historically, first in martyrdom and then in asceticism or spiritual training, as we enter into the death of ourself, we become God's very own possession. We are being transformed by Christ, who has now become our life. Now, this process of transformation is mystical in this sense. And here's where it's really important to understand what the tradition is referring to when it talks about mysticism and mystical. It doesn't mean that our transformation happens with big experiences. Sometimes when people hear the word mystical experience, they think of something big, some sort of ecstatic experience of the presence of God. And as a charismatic, I know that this happens. I've experienced it along a spectrum of experience, from something as ordinary as a well-up of emotion as I think about the goodness or the love of God, all the way to truly emotional moments where I've been receiving prayer and I'm on the floor experiencing a tremendous power of God. I mean, these are mystical experiences, but they aren't mystical because of the nature of the experience. They're mystical in the sense that something that is true, something that was hidden to me, is now revealed to me. I've gained access in those moments to something that is already taking place. So even before I become aware of it, it's already happening in a very slow and quiet and hidden way. And then we become present to these things, and the mystery of what is already happening beneath the surface is revealed. We become present to the depth of the love of God or the grace of God or the way that God is healing us and transforming us. And the reason that we're doing all of this theological work and laying a foundation here in this first course is for the very simple fact that the work of our own spiritual formation and the work happening in spiritual direction is very much rooted in this very basic idea. There is a mysterious work happening in us. There's something mysterious happening in the life of the people that we journey with in community and in spiritual friendship and in spiritual direction. And we might not be entirely sure what the mechanism is. We might not even know what is happening at the deep and hidden level in our life with God. but we hold this space in prayer and in presence to one another and in listening intently over months and years. And to know at the deepest part of who I am that the outcome of this mysterious and hidden work has the goal of becoming just like Christ and to become as God is when He inhabits the human body. The most unmistakable doctrine of the early church is this idea that our journey is headed towards union with God, and that the transformational process is long and slow, but it ends with the image and the likeness of God in us being fully restored. So Christian mysticism means that this is being done because Christ has joined Himself to us and has joined us to Himself in His body, which is the church. And we now live by faith in the reality that there is something hidden that is happening. We live by faith that what God has promised is happening in us is happening. And we believe that even though we can't see the tiny seed below the surface of the soil, we believe that the seed is in fact working its way all the way through the garden. This is how a mustard seed grows, by the way. It grows deep and wide and mostly underground before the leaves begin to show. It's the mystery of the yeast that we can't really see working its way through the whole lump of dough. And for those of us who train and practice as spiritual directors, we get to remind people of this hidden work. We get to be present to them when the hidden work of God is being revealed, and we get to help them name it. And we help people learn how to pay deeper attention to the hidden work. We help people remove obstacles in their life that might be standing in the way of that hidden work, or perhaps there are things that are simply standing in the way of being attentive to the work that God is doing. And so we sit with people as they cry out to God for specific ways in which they long for that work to be completed, and we point out for them the ongoing grace and mercy and kindness and love of God that fuels this work from this day until it's complete. So the work of God is often hidden, but what happens is that this hidden work gets fleshed out in real fruit, in love and in peace between those in conflict, in greater degrees of joy, in growth in patience and kindness shown to neighbors and strangers, in gentleness in the way that we speak to each other, faithfulness in the things that God has asked of us, and self-control against the things that tempt us away from this life. So the fruit of the Spirit are the ways in which that hidden work of God reforming us begins to bear likeness of His character. We grow in love because God is love, and we grow in patience because God is patient. So the fruit of the Spirit is the fruit that comes as the soul is slowly united with God. And this hidden process at work is what the early church called theosis, or deification, or sometimes divinization. It's the process of being made to be like God.